guys, welcome back to A Page in the Chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige and today it is time for my top 10 books of 2021. I wanted to put off filming this until we were actually in the new year so that I had the full year of books to choose from. You know, what if I read my new favourite book as my last book of the year? I didn't. I could have probably filmed this video like back in October, but it's fine. It's fine. We were holding out for something great. So overall in the year of 2021, I read 96 books. And this is my top 10 favourites of the year. There are some middle books that didn't quite make this list that I really loved too and wanted to be on this list. Clearly it was a pretty good reading year if 10 wasn't even enough slots for 5-star reads and favourite books of the year and stuff like that. So I've had to do a lot of like winnowing down. There were some books that I was absolutely 100% have to be on this list, and other books that I could be a bit more flexible with, but we will get on into all of that. If you guys like seeing these yearly wrap-ups and general wrap-ups and you just want to hear more of my thoughts, then do feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I upload twice a week on a Wednesday and a Friday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy, and you guys can expect that my lowest 10 books video will be coming next, as well as my 2022 TBR and my anticipated releases for 2022. There's still a lot of kind of December, January standard booktube videos left to come, so you might want to subscribe if you're looking forward to that kind of content. And if seeing my face here twice a week is just simply not enough and you feel like you're just so obsessed with me that you have to see more, then you can check me out on my social medias at Page in Chapter. And don't worry, I won't think that you're obsessed with me if you follow me on there. And on that note, let's get into the books. So these are in no particular order other than the top 2 spots. I know top 2 doesn't make as much sense as top 3, but the top 2 were just really obvious to me. The way my brain works in terms of rankings is very odd. So the first book that I wish to discuss with you was my most recent read, and I'm getting it out of the way early because I know you guys have heard me talk about this book a lot, so I'm just going to keep it very short and sweet for this book because you already know why I love it. And that is The Joy of Small Things by Hannah Jane Parkinson. It's just a collection of her columns in The Guardian about all the small things in life that she really enjoys, like really small things, like cozy dressing gown, looking out a window when it's raining, like small things in life. It's imbued with this really dry, sarcastic sense of humour, and I just found that I agreed with her on a lot of things, especially things that she was like making fun of or taking digs at. So I really related to this book and it made me feel a lot better about my life, which is usually what you're looking for from a self-help book. It's become one of my favourite books of the year instantly. It was an easy 5 stars. I've bought copies for all of my friends and I carry it around with me everywhere now, so it would be a little hard to not put this one on my favourite books of the year when it had such an effect on me that I felt the need to do all of those things. One thing I will say about this book, it's a really expensive book. This is £10 in the UK, and I appreciate like it's a hardcover, but it's a really tiny book. I don't think this is worth £10 in all honesty, but hey ho, what can you do? Pricing is pricing, right? And so the next book that I would like to talk about is one that I haven't spoken about in a while, and that is The Gilded Ones by Nomina Fauna. Now, I believe I read this for Pixarathon, which I completed a month late. Sorry. And I don't remember what prompt I read this for or anything like that, but I just remember being really blown away by this book. And I was expecting it to be such a standard YA fantasy. I was not really expecting a lot out of this book. I could not put it down, and I did give it 5 stars, and I've just seen that the sequel has been announced. I will be pre-ordering that when I get around to it, and I'm just so excited about this. So this fantasy kind of takes place in this fantastical / dystopian world where when girls reach a certain age, they have to go to a reaping where their skin is cut, and if they bleed red then they are deemed pure, and you want to be deemed pure. If you're to be kept a member of society, you need to be deemed pure. Except our main character is always treated as an outcast because of her skin colour, and when she goes to this reaping they cut her and she bleeds gold, which takes her on this big adventure and leads her into this situation where she has to be trying to save the world that has taught her she is an outsider and she is worth nothing her entire life. This adventure and this trying to save the world that she's from and discover her heritage and why she's bleeding gold, she actually discovers that she is very, very powerful, and maybe they should not have treated her that way. This book as well doesn't feel YA in that it's very, very clever, and I'm not saying that YA books aren't clever, they're getting cleverer and cleverer, but I'm saying in terms of like the political understanding and the discussion of the patriarchy and how women act and can reject each other underneath this patriarchal system felt more adult fantasy than YA, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was very accessible, had all of the things that I like to see in a fantasy, because I like my fantasies to be a bit more. They like them to say something, and this definitely said something, and I loved it. Cannot wait for the next book. I will be rereading this before the next book comes out. I think this might be my year of rereads because there's a lot that I do want to reread. I definitely recommend. The next book on this list is a little bit of a genre switch up, and that is Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry. And I am not a huge reader of like contemporary or YA contemporary or YA contemporary romance. I think they have their place. I like them. Except this one, the title just really called out to me. I was in a massive reading slump when I read this, I believe, and I was like just really hoping that it would pull me out of it, and I had such a good time with this book. So I won't lie, I read this in like the first half of the year, and I do not remember the names of the characters, but I know that this is about our main character, and she has a diary and she keeps a lot of lists in there, and some of these lists reveal really deep things about her. So one of the lists is all the times that she's ugly cried, except another list is all of the secrets that she has been hiding. And then one day, someone gets a hold of the journal and they keep releasing bits of this journal, essentially like blackmailing her until she gets it back. It feels a little bit Ace of Spades, except it's not as thrillery as Ace of Spades. It is still very much a contemporary romance. And it is a really coming of age story. It really gets to the heart of some identity issues. It has a very diverse range of characters, and I really, really enjoyed it. Again, I thought it felt like it was more than just a YA contemporary, and I'm really loving to see that the YA genre, well, it's not a genre, the YA demographic is starting to touch on these deeper issues and find ways to work in these really deep issues in society into their books. If you haven't checked this book out yet, I would definitely recommend it. It's a very fun, light read, whilst also dealing with some not light topics. The next two books on this list are actually graphic novels. One of them I'm sure everybody has on their list and you will expect to see it. The other, maybe not so much. So the obvious one is Heartstopper Volume 4. Now, I actually read every single Heartstopper this year. Heartstopper Volume 1 was my very first book of 2021. It was a great note to start on, and then I purchased all of the following volumes and actually read them all this year. And it was a little bit hard to choose which one was going to be my favourite because I love them all. I had to pick Volume 4 because I remembered the fact that I read this book for part of my 21 in 21 challenge, and watching that footage back, you can just see the excitement on my face reading this. I was like fully freaking out, like slamming the book down. It could not contain my joy at this book. So it had to be this one. Each book starts to deal with mental health a little bit more, and this book, obviously being the most recent one published, deals with it in the most detail and very much deals with not just how mental health affects the person dealing with it, but the effect that these mental health issues are having on the person's loved ones. And one of the things that I particularly loved about this book in the YA demographic is that our characters' mental health problems don't go away when they get into a relationship. In fact, they struggle with them just as much, if not more. And it is very much about the characters learning that they can't fix them. The relationship can't fix them. You can't love someone enough to fix them, but you can be there for them and encourage them to get the help from the professionals. And this book just handled it so well, and it handles mental health in such an easy to understand and almost like happy way. Like when I think about the Heartstopper series, I don't think that it's a really hard-hitting look at mental health. I think it's a really, really cute story about Nick and Charlie falling in love in high school. But honestly, I love this book so much, it had to be in here. And then we have another graphic novel that I read exactly the same day as Heartstopper Volume 4 because I also read it for my 21 books in 21 hours challenge. And that is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. So this follows our main character, Freddie, short for Frederica, and she has been dating a girl called Laura Dean, except Laura Dean keeps breaking up with her. And this time, when Laura Dean breaks up with her, Freddie is kind of like, well, you know, this keeps happening. And it's very much about her coming to terms with this breakup and coming to terms with the fact that she is not being treated right in this constantly on and off again relationship, and making new friends in the process. Just, it's very coming of age, very high school romance / breakup. The graphic style also really sold me on this book. It's all in themes of black, white and pink. It's just absolutely beautiful, okay? I love the fact that they put touches of colour in here, but it's not too much. But it is just such a fun read. And we then have A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik Backman. I really wasn't sure if this one was gonna make the list. I loved it, don't get me wrong, but was it one of my favourites? And then I thought about the fact that I was laughing and crying within the space of about 10 lines and thought, yeah, a book that can give me that kind of reaction deserves to be on my favourites list. And it is a book that has really stayed with me and was a perfect introduction to Fredrik Backman, I won't lie. I don't want to give too much away with this book. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's very much best to go in blind. The blurb doesn't give much away and there's a reason for that. So this follows our main character Uwe, and he is a very, very, very cantankerous old man who's just never really got with the times and thinks that all the value of life is in the way he grew up doing things and not in this new technological way of doing things. And it is about him learning through his neighbours constantly needing him. He is valued, and it's about us as a reader learning that the things he stands for are valued. I found it so hard to get into at the beginning. I was like, why do I care about this man and his thoughts? Like, I really thought that I was going to DNF it. I didn't understand the hype about this book. But then you kind of just can't put it down. It's a weird one. I feel like the structure of the book and the way Fredrik Backman has you read this really like perfectly captures the other character's relationship with Uwe, and it just worked for me. It worked really well. As I said, I was like laughing and sobbing in tandem at the end of the book. I must have looked like a right mess. Thank God I was alone. It did destroy me, I won't lie. The bit with the cat, I'm tearing up now just thinking about it. I recommend this book like wholeheartedly. And this is another one that I really haven't spoken about in a while. But I saw it on my Goodreads and I was like, oh my god, yeah, I forgot how much I loved that book. And it did make the cut. And that is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This is a sapphic YA romance about our main character, Lily Hugh. She's living in America in 1954. And she is a Chinese American living against the backdrop of the Red Scare. It causes a lot of problems for Lily. And she is also falling in love with our other main character, Kath, whilst also facing a lot of the problems that her family and culture are dealing with. And this book explores it so well and with such amazingness. That's the only word for it. Again, this was a book that just went so far beyond its genre. Historical fiction element of this is just handled so well. Melinda Lowe clearly knows exactly what she's talking about. She knows so much. Any kind of Mandarin or Cantonese that is spoken in this book is written in its true form. It's written in the figures, and then the translations are written in the footnotes. And I liked this because it maintained the cultural integrity of the book. I also liked this because I felt like it really represented this multicultural world that our main character was living in. I really loved this book. I loved how much I learned from it. I loved that at times it felt a little bit like a non-fiction, and I loved our main characters Lily and Kath. I was really rooting for them and really enjoyed seeing it play out on the page. I couldn't put it down, and I'm just so happy that I read it, and it has in fact made the list, so congratulations. And I was thinking as I was going through this list about where I was going to put things, that I actually do have a number 3 book. So my top 3 books are in order, and in third place we have Olive by Emma Gannon. For the life of me I cannot find my copy of this book anywhere. I don't know if I've forgotten a drawer that I have books kept in or something. I just cannot find this book. But that's not a comment on how good the book is, it's just a comment on how disorganized my books are at the moment. So Olive by Emma Gannon just kind of had to be up there in my top 3. It really had such a profound effect on me. So this book follows our main character Olive, and she has decided that she doesn't want children, and that's causing a lot of upset in her life. A lot of her friends have children or are desperately trying to have children. It's caused her relationship to end. She kind of feels like she doesn't fit into the world anymore. Like there's all this pressure and she just doesn't want it, but everyone doesn't accept the fact that she doesn't want it. They kind of think that, oh, you'll change your mind when you have kids, and she's like, but I don't want to have kids, like that's the point. And it just chronicles Olive's friendships and romantic life in her 30s when she's decided that she doesn't want kids, and coming to terms with this and trying to find like-minded people. Again, at times it really felt like a non-fiction, because it really felt like a feature piece for an article at times. Like the things that I was reading just blew my mind, some of the facts and figures that she managed to work into this book. But what I also really loved about this book is that it kind of turns this notion of focus on your career in your 20s, have a family in your 30s. It very much turned it on its head and attacked this notion. It made me feel so much better about my life. Okay, I'm nowhere near my 30s. You don't really have to make a decision on whether I want children or not yet. There's still so much pressure on your 20s because you have to succeed in your 20s, because you won't have time in your 30s because you'll be having children and starting a family. You can't possibly succeed when you do that. And this book just really helped take some of the pressure off that a little bit. So that one takes the 3rd spot quite easily. And then in 2nd place is, I honestly, like, I'm smiling just thinking about it. I loved it so much. So in 2nd place is House of Earth and Blood, part of the Crescent City series by Sarah J Maas. I have already placed my pre-order for the 2nd book. It's coming out next month, I believe. It's gonna be at my door the minute it's allowed to be at my door. Knowing Waterstones, it might be at my door a couple days before it's supposed to be at my door. I'm in such a fantasy romance kick right now that I'm gonna reread this as my next book. It's gonna be my 2nd book of the year again. It was my 2nd book of last year, and I said the minute that I closed this book that it was gonna be my favourite book of the year. And I was almost right. It's an urban contemporary, and again, being very Sarah J Maas, kind of follows the Fae, except there are multiple different fantasy creatures in this. There's like werewolves, I think potentially vampires, but I'm not sure. There's definitely werewolves and Fae, and each fantastical creature belongs to its own house in this city, and each house forms a political faction in government, essentially. And our main character, Bryce, is half Fae, half human, which gets her very minimal rights in this society, but she is best friends with one of the top dog werewolves. top dog werewolves on the scene, until one day she goes over to her best friend's apartment and finds the whole clan of werewolves has been murdered. So multiple years later, when the supposed killer of her best friends is in jail, the murders start up again, and Bryce is ordered to investigate these murders along with an enslaved fallen angel named Hunt. And they go running around the city trying to get to the bottom of what on earth has happened. And this book had me screaming, crying, throwing up. I haven't read a book that's made me fangirl this much since I was 12 years old, reading Cassandra Clare books. I am obsessed with this. So yeah, I am so excited about this. I'm not a huge one for pre-orders. I have to be massively invested in a book series or just a book in general to actually pre-order a book, but I pre-ordered this one, so do with that information what you will. If you were raised by Cassandra Clare like I was, then you need this book in your life. And then the number 1 book, the best book that I read in 2021, Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this follows the Reaver family, and they are the children of Mick Reaver, and he is very, very famous, except he abandoned his children when they were young, and now they are all grown up and have their own talents and are vaguely famous in the surfing / modelling world. And in a very Taylor Swift-esque 4th of July party fashion, at the end of the summer every single year, the Reaver siblings throw a massive party. And it used to just be their surfing buddies on the beach, but as they've gotten more and more famous, more and more famous people come to this party, and you go into this book knowing that by 6 a.m. the next morning the house is on fire. It all takes place over the course of 24 hours. It's all broken up into little time spans. Just, I adored every second of this book. It can do no wrong. I love the Reaver siblings just as a group. I want to be part of their family so badly. One of those books where I just cried at the end simply because it was over and there's nothing else like this out there. I just knew that it was my favourite, that there was never going to be anything that could top the experience of reading this. And there's no fancy reason, it's just a feeling, and that is the joy of reading, is that it can give you these feelings. And for 2022 we are manifesting only reading books like that give me the feelings that these books have given me. One of my favourite books of all time, again one that I recommend to absolutely everybody. And then, so here we have my top 10 books. We're missing Olive and Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry, but yeah, it's a pretty diverse list of books. I was kind of giving myself a lot of hate in my little brain up here because I was like, oh, you didn't read as diversely as you said you were going to this year. But looking at this list, I think I did. I'm feeling so good now that I filmed this and talked about a load of books that I love. Let me know down in the comments what you think of these books, what some of your top books of the year are, and maybe I can find some recommendations. Just have a chat with me about books is the general consensus. Anywho, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, why not hit that big red subscribe button down below to stay tuned for future content. There's absolutely no shortage of bookish content here. It's all I talk about, even off camera, so you may as well subscribe. You can also check me out on Instagram and Twitter at Page and Chapter, because as I said, books are literally all I talk about, even off camera, so you can see more of that on my other social medias if you would like to. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed. I hope you are having a fantastic week, you are enjoying everything you are reading, and 2022 is off to a fantastic start for you, and I will see you next week for my next video. Bye guys.